Okay, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I have a great guest tonight, and I'm excited because this person who I'm going to introduce in a couple of seconds, played at my alma mater, University of Maine football, and I'm jacked up to have a former Black Bear on the show. Um, but Mike Devito, Mike, welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you, and I'm excited that you're my second Black Bear on the show. We'll talk about the first one in a little bit, but welcome to the show, Mike.
Jeff, my black bear brother, thank you for having me, man. I'm so excited to be here. I can't wait to chop it up with you.
Oh my God, we got so many things to talk about, and it's the problem that I have, Mike, on this show is this: I just can't stop asking questions. You know what I mean?
I love it.
And it can roll forever. But but before we get going, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? I mean, you had a phenomenal college career on into the NFL for a long time, and then now you're making a huge impact back at Maine, doing all kinds of cool stuff. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Again, my name's Mike Devito. Like you said, went to the University of Maine, grew up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, was originally born in New York, family from Brooklyn, New York. But we grew up in Cape Cod. My dad started a construction business down there, went to Nauset High School, and then had the opportunity in 2002 to go to the University of Maine. Played 5 years there, redshirted, played 5 years. I met my wife, I met Jesus, I met my best friend. And then I got an opportunity to go play 9 years in the NFL, 6 years with the Jets, the team I grew up rooting for, and 3 years with the Chiefs. And since then, I've retired from football in 2016, back to Maine in Hamden, where my wife and we live with our three boys, and recently took a role at the University of Maine with the football team as a director of player development. And I also will be teaching philosophy this fall for the first time. I'm finishing up my PhD in philosophy at the University of Birmingham in the UK, and I'll be teaching it at the University of Maine. So great to be back to my alma mater and doing two things that I love, which is football and philosophy. So,
Man, Mike, that is so cool. And I know we were just chatting before, is we're talking about athletics and academics.
hmm.
Okay. And if I go, backwards in time, it seems it's coming up on a half a century,
Hmm.
which is kind of crazy to think that way. But when I was in school, academics and athletics didn't really go together,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it was the old thing, C's get degrees, you know what I
yeah,
mean? But now in today's world, academics and athletics is in vogue.
yeah.
It's like wow, it's cool. It's sometimes, and for a lot of places, it's almost expected.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. My first question to you is PhD. That's like incredible,
Yeah, thank
right?
you.
NFL career, just as incredible.
Hmm.
Great college career. How the heck did you balance all of that athletic stuff
Yeah.
and get a PhD?
Well, Jeff, to be honest with you, I didn't. I was very much in the same philosophy, and approach that you just spoke about, which was C's get degrees. I mean, my dad, Vinny from Brooklyn, that was the message he said when I went to Maine. He's like, look, you're going to be great at football, sell out, and
Yep.
do everything you can to be the best football player you can be, and just get by in school.
Yeah.
And I took that approach, and it was, I got B's and C's, and I figured out how to get B's and C's with the minimal amount of effort. Um, and so I think that, this is probably counter to what most people, well, or you're right. When you look at the world today, these kids are incredibly talented. I mean, when I look at the students that are at the University of Maine now, they are smarter than I ever was. They're also better football players. So I don't know. I don't know what happened between when I was there and what happened now. You're right. I mean, academics and athletics are in vogue, but I couldn't do it. And my
Yeah.
dad was very much his philosophy was, look, don't be a jack of all trades and a master of none. He's like, master something, be great at something. And so when it came to football, both in high school, college, and the NFL, I was sold out. I did minimal elsewhere. And then when I retired in 2016 through a number of events, I realized when I was playing football that when I got done, I did want to pursue an academic career. I found philosophy very interesting, and I knew I wanted to take that path. And so as soon as I got done with football, I transitioned to the academic world. It took 2 master's degrees to get a resume built up that was good enough to get into a good PhD program. But then it was the same thing. I didn't do anything with football for the first, I don't know, 8 years. I was retired. I mean, I was just all academics. And now I've finally gotten to a place where the PhD is coming to the end. The head coach at the University of Maine is a close friend of mine. We played together, Jordan Stevens. He got the role 2 years ago as the head coach over there. So I thought, I wanted to get involved there as well. And so now I'm at the place where I was able to sort of climb the mountain in these 2 areas. And now I can split the time a little bit, teaching and working with the football team. But I don't know how people do it, Jeff. It's hard. Again, I have to sell out on something to be
Yeah.
great at it.
Yeah.
I'm not talented enough to just sort of to do both. I don't know how people do it. I find it very impressive, and it's one thing that I know as older guys, we knock this new generation of players, and I think justifiably so for a lot of reasons. But the one thing I will say is they're emotionally intelligent. They're just intelligent across the board. They're very
Yeah.
smart people. So it's been fun to get plugged into those guys. But yeah, that's a long answer to a
Yes, but yeah, it's just amazing what you're doing, and what's it like to come back full circle? You're up in Maine again. You're working with the football team. You're heavily involved with helping develop these players. What's it
Yeah.
like being back there?
Jeff, when I probably the hardest 2 years of my life were 2017 and 2018 when I had retired, right after I retired from the NFL, because I'd missed the game so much. And I mostly, I know it's cliche, but it's just true. Like I missed the locker room. I missed
Yeah.
the guys. And Jeff, it's hard to find people who are built like that, who are sort of type A. I mean, you get to the Division I and NFL level, that's a special group of human beings in there. There's
Yeah.
a little bit off with those guys. They're a little
Yep.
bit tapped. They're
Yep.
also very type A, really motivated. And they're my brothers. And
Yep.
so, to not have that was very difficult. So getting back involved with football the past, gosh, it's been a year and a half now. It brings me so much joy being around those guys. I love our team. I love every guy on that roster. And there's nothing like being on the sidelines and them coming over and giving me a hug and
Yeah.
saying what's up, and the mutual respect and being part of the brotherhood, right? Coach Stevens talks about the University of Maine, the brotherhood. That's our motto. That's our philosophy. That's our culture. And being a part of that, I'm just incredibly grateful for the guys, for the coaches, for allowing me to do that, because I missed the hell out of it. And it's incredibly rewarding and incredibly fulfilling to be back out there with those guys and to be a part of something like that again.
It's I haven't been up there in quite some time, but it's like once you're back, it's like you never left.
Oh, it's Jeff. It's like I tell my wife, it's like my Hogwarts from like from Harry Potter. It's like I
Yeah.
step foot on campus and I just feel an incredible amount of peace and joy. Like, and that when I think back to my recruiting trip, people ask me, why did you choose the University of Maine? The second I stepped foot on the campus, I knew that's where I wanted to be. And there was nothing tangible that I could point at and say, oh, it's this coach or this
Yeah.
person, this philosophy or this building or this program. I just knew in my heart that that was the right place. And I've had that feeling ever since.
Yeah. You feel like you're at home,
Absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely. Special
And
spot.
and then, the relationships, like you said, the relationships you build, the locker room, the camaraderie, the fun afterwards, the parties, the Greek life, if you want to participate in that, and just the campus itself, where it's at, and what a lot of people don't understand, like it's out in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Right.
And when you leave the campus, you go into Old Town, you go into Orono, there's really not much there.
And that's the beauty of it, Jeff,
Yeah.
right? That's the beauty of it. When you go, you have to be built different to be a Maine black bear.
Yeah.
And that's not, I'm sure every program says that. But to your point, you really have to be built different to be a part of this program.
Yeah.
It's minus 18 degrees in January.
Oof.
It's cold, it's gray, it's
Yeah.
dark. It's not a lot to do
Yep.
except to be together as a brotherhood
Yeah.
and get better at football.
Yeah.
And as you go, you end up loving the atmosphere up here. but there's so many guys that I played that have retired back to Central Maine. And these
Yeah.
are guys from New York and New Jersey
Yeah.
and Delaware and all this stuff. And they're up here raising their families up here because of how special this spot is.
Yes.
So no, you're right. You're exactly right.
Yeah. And just the summer weather, you can't beat it,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah, and that's the thing. You have all 4 seasons.
Yeah.
And Coach Stevens, when we do our recruiting day, like our recruiting days where we have the recruits in, we'll put up the slides of everything that you can do
Yeah.
during the different seasons. And you forget up here, you're like, oh yeah, you can go snowboarding on these beautiful
Yeah.
mountains, and or you can go to Bar Harbor in the
Yeah.
summer and be on the coast,
Yep.
lobster fishing, and
Yeah.
it really is a special place. The motto, the state motto is the way life should be, and Maine, the way life should be. And
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I've been to, I'm pretty sure all 50 states, if not most of them, and I have never been to a place where I had this feeling where I was like, oh yeah, this is where I'm
Is
supposed to be.
home.
Yeah,
That's good.
exactly,
That's
exactly.
awesome. Well, if we go backwards in time, Mike,
Yeah,
and we talk about, college football, how do you think, like you kind of just mapped it out a little bit, but how do you think going up to Maine, you know, and playing up there, how do you think that contributed to your own personal growth, in self-development while you're up there?
yeah, yeah. So let's I'll get there a roundabout way. So I was recently listening to this cognitive scientist out of Stanford talk about a part of our brain. It's called the AMCC. And this small part of our brain controls grit, it controls discipline, willpower. All that stuff is stored in this AMCC. And he was talking about how this thing grows and develops. And he says it grows and develops when you do stuff that's difficult. He
Mm,
said, when you do difficult things, when you put your body through stuff that you don't enjoy, that's very hard, that part of your brain grows. And that's why a lot, companies will seek after Navy SEALs and football players and people that have been through it, right?
yep.
Because
Yep.
they have those characteristics. I got a PhD in the growth of that part of my brain at the University of Maine because we talked about it. It is just such a tough place, and
Yeah.
the players that I the team that I became a part of coming in as a freshman in 2002, those are still the toughest guys I've ever been around.
Yeah.
We recently had our alumni reunion, and all those guys were back. We had about 54 guys there, and I just remember being in that room, and it just was. They're still the toughest guys I've been around
Yeah.
in the league. Anywhere else that I've been, if I had to get in a street fight, I'm picking those guys. I mean, I was just so fortunate to come in and be a part of incredible players: Stephen Cooper, Lofa Tatupu, Chad Hayes. All these guys played a long time in the NFL, but they were leaders on that team when I came in, and so I learned how to be tough. It was tough. You got in
Yeah.
that training camp, and you had to earn your way onto that team.
Oh yeah.
You didn't sign a letter of intent and just become part of that team. They would put you through it
Oh
to
yeah.
become a part of that team. And then every phase, every semester, every year there, you continue to grow, you continue to get tougher, you continue to get more discipline. And I remember one year in 2011, I tell the story often. 2011, I'm in the NFL, I'm playing for the Jets, and we had our 11 and 12 active players in the NFL that year from the University of Maine. And Rex Ryan stopped me in the hallway and he said, DeVito, how come every time we play a team that has a guy from Maine on it, he's the toughest guy on the roster?
Wow.
I said, well, it's not surprising, because again, Maine
Yep.
trains you up that way. It's not, we don't just say it, you have to be built
Yeah.
different. And it's not like the military, it's not like the Marines or anything like that, but it's the same idea in the sense that you're going to get tempered and
Yeah.
sharpened and tougher, mentally and physically tougher. And so that's allowed me, not just on the football field, but more importantly, as a husband, as a father, as a Christian, as a person in the community, my academics, forget it. All of those intangible things that were created at the University of Maine transferred over to other aspects of my life. Right? It's like that AMCC was able, that muscle in my brain was able to grow and allow me to do not that I'm perfect, but do well at other phases and other important aspects of life. And so, I owe everything to the
Yeah,
University of Maine. My first 18 years to my parents, and then everything after that to the University of Maine.
that's awesome. I think if I go back and remember my first camp in 1983, is it just made everything else easier,
Well, that's a great way to put it. That's
right?
exactly right.
It's
Yeah,
just like if I could survive that,
right.
you know, like I can do anything.
Oh, Jeff, you're exactly right. That is a perfect way to put it.
Yeah,
Everything in contrast to those days,
yeah,
it's weak sauce. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
bring it.
yeah.
Because
And
I've
and
been through the fire.
right. And I get a little testy sometimes when I'm like talking with people, work related stuff or life related, whatever. And I'm like, really? It's not that hard. Like,
Yeah,
you really want to see hard? I'll show
yeah.
you hard.
Oh, you're exactly right.
Yeah,
You're exactly right. Everything just, there are tough times in life, but
yeah,
what we've been through and what the University of Maine prepared us for, again, it's weak sauce in comparison.
yeah,
You can attack, and I'm so grateful for that,
yeah,
because you're right. I see so many people dealing with struggles and different things, and it's like, I've been given by the grace of God um the tools necessary to take things head on.
yeah,
And so you're right, you can overcome challenges a bit easier than others because of our background
right.
and what we've gone through. And
Just makes you stronger,
absolutely.
you know?
Oh, I love it.
Like that song, right? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, it
It's
didn't kill us. I tell you, it almost
close,
did.
close. There was some mornings I didn't know. I didn't know if I was gonna make it out of there, Jeff. There
Yeah.
was some mornings.
So I know it's a while back, and you were there 5 years, had some great times. Can you pinpoint one thing that, like, wow, this is like the most memorable moment that I'll never forget?
Hmm. Meeting my wife. You want a football moment? So,
But any moment is
oh
good.
yeah. So my wife doesn't remember this, but I do. So I was a senior in high school getting recruited by the University of Maine. My wife, Jessie, she was a freshman, and she was friends with the now wife of my host, Brian Mann, who was a football player. And Brian told her to hit on me so that I would come to Maine. So he said, flirt with me during the weekend. And I met her, and I knew from the day, I still remember that, January 2002, being up there and meeting her and being like, oh man, just blown away, blown away. And so we actually didn't start dating till I was in the NFL. We were best friends our time through college.
You made it all the way through college, didn't date, nothing.
No, no,
Wow.
no, 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 yeah, no, we were just really close. And then we started dating my second year in the NFL, and we dated. It was my third year, and our first date was July 19th, 2009, and then we were married the next year, July 19th, 2010.
That's awesome. Now, how did
Yeah,
you stay in touch? You left the school and you went into the NFL. How'd you stay in touch?
yeah. So she was in Boston, I was in New York, and we had still been in touch because we were close, and then but I was always head over heels for her, and then the timing just ended up where I was like, "Hey, do you want to go on a date? Like, you want to hang out?" And we just hit it off. And within a week, we were like, "We're getting married." We just
Wow.
knew it. Same thing like when I got to the University of Wayne, how I knew I wanted to be
Yeah,
there. When I met my wife, I was like, I know I want to be with her.
that's awesome. Now, was
Yeah.
she an athlete up there too?
No, no, no. She was a cheerleader in high school. She went to Bangor, which is
All
Bangor High
right.
School, which is right near the college.
Yep.
And no, she was just part of our group. I mean, she came to the reunion with me because she's very much a black bear.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, it's fun.
So looking at, pressures,
Yeah.
athletic pressures, academic pressures, how did you handle and if you had any, what kind the pressures of being there athletically and
Yeah.
dealing with the day in, the day out pressure of playing at that level, for 5 years?
Yeah, it is not easy. It was not
Okay.
easy. Especially being an introverted person. I've come to learn later in life how important it is to have fellowship with other friends and close close people and to, to share those struggles. That was not something that I did in college. I sort of internalized everything. And, I suffered through a lot of anxiety,
Mm,
a lot of worry and stress and stress about things that didn't necessarily, need to be stressed about. But you're right. It's just when you're playing Division I college football, you are constantly being evaluated
yeah.
and you constantly feel the pressure to perform. And there are going to be days that you don't do well, but how you respond to that is vitally important. And it wasn't easy for me, Jeff. It was definitely a learning process. I was lucky to have coaches like Jeff Commissione, who's now the D-line coach at Boston College, to have somebody like Jeff who was patient with me, who sort of took me under his wing and allowed me to grow, could see that I was struggling at times, showed me grace. Was very, obviously a very tough coach, but also like very much a father figure to me. He was in my wedding and somebody that I thank God for. I mean, I think he sort of took the proverbial handoff from my dad when I got into college and served that role for me. And so I was lucky to have him. I should have leaned more on friends, brothers on the team. I think I would have been more successful. I would have done better and handled those situations better had
Yeah.
I leaned on others. But part of me, I wish I had something other than I think I just got lucky. I stayed the course, head down, even in the face of the anxiety and the pressure. Just kept grinding and my old man growing up, again, Vinny from Brooklyn, there was no quitting,
Right.
right? If you quit something, you were gonna face hell when you got home. So like when I was at the University of Maine, there was no leaving that. I would rather suffer the pressure of Division I football than to face my dad because I quit. So having that role model in my life was incredibly important too, because there was no out, right? There was
Yeah.
suffer or figure out how not to suffer, but
Yeah.
you're not getting out of this.
Yeah.
So again, I guess the more to your question, it was truly fortunate luck to have people like my dad and Coach Kamish,
Yeah.
older father type people in my life to help me through those times. Um, and it prepared me for the NFL because a lot of guys get there and everything's, especially these guys that come from bigger schools and they're drafted high and
Yeah.
everything was always easy for them. And the NFL is a great equalizer because none
Oh
of
yeah.
that shit matters.
No.
You got to be ready. I heard a coach say, uh, coach tell us once, he said, I love college football. He's like Saturday games are fun to watch and I enjoy it. But he said the men play on Sunday. The men play. I mean, it really,
Yeah.
it's the big boys. And so, but again, University of Maine prepared me for that.
Yeah.
It had me ready to deal with those pressures. I was like, oh, this is old hat. I've been through
Yeah.
this. I know how to work through this. So they prepared me, but it wasn't always easy. And then looking back, I think I could have done a lot better again had I had leaned on my network. And that's one thing that I feel like the players do a great job of nowadays is their emotional intelligence. One thing I see with these guys is they are very well spoken. They're connected with each other. They like their own space, but they're emotionally more vulnerable than we
Yeah.
are. They'll,
Yeah.
they'll let out, and I think that's incredibly important when it comes to dealing with that pressure and that adversity and the stress.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that answers it, but
Yeah. It's a great answer, and I have one statement and another question for you. You said you think you just got lucky. I was told that, or I used to say that myself years ago, Mike. I just got lucky. I just got lucky until somebody who was very close to me at the time literally pulled me aside and says, "Don't ever say that you got lucky."
hmm,
He says, "Your hard work finds good luck."
yeah, that's good. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and boom, it hit me like a ton of bricks. So now when I see all these guys or girls who are really working hard,
Right,
and I'm like, man, awesome job. This all just fun. Oh, I just got lucky. No, you got lucky because you worked your butt off.
right, exactly.
You
No,
know?
that's
Yeah.
exactly right. It's
Yeah.
exactly right. And again, I thank people like my dad who had me trained up and ready for
Yeah.
that, prepared for that.
Yeah.
It was like, What I see now, Jeff, is my dad was really hard growing up. To your point, we had to work hard, we
Yeah.
had to perform well, and there wasn't a lot of hanging out with friends. It was like you were gonna, lift weights, play football, and then you were gonna work. I mean, and I look at my kids now and I see how hard it is to do that, to hold them and I remember thinking, this guy's a jerk. This is so easy.
Yeah.
He just tells us to go to work, and now
Yeah.
I see how hard it actually is. Because
Yeah.
the easy thing to do is to just let them do what they want
Right.
and sort of
Keep them
make it
quiet. Go sit
comfortable.
over
Yeah,
there. That. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
comfortable and
Yep.
safe.
Yep.
And I have to fight against that. So my dad was a massive, massive element or aspect of my life as far as being prepared to face that adversity and stress,
That's
because
great.
he kept us grinding. He
Yeah.
kept us. There was no quit. Quitting was never an option.
Yeah.
So I was
That's
lucky to have
awesome.
that foundation. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very, very fortunate. That's awesome. But you mentioned anxiety. Can we touch on that a second?
Mm,
You know,
absolutely. Absolutely.
there's so many, everybody's got some sort of anxiety somewhere, right? And some people deal with it better than others.
Yeah.
So if you can share, like, how did you know, hey, I'm really freaking out here. I got some anxiety building up. And how did you handle it? How did you deal with it? Because I know, like today, like Haley Perkins from your school, she was on the
Yeah.
show about a month or so ago.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's telling about, her position, and she's there as a resource for the athletes. That when
Yeah.
I was playing, there was like, hey, you got anxiety? Go sit over there and be quiet. We don't want to hear about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
how did you handle that?
Yeah. Jeff. This could be a podcast in and of itself, but
Yeah.
I honestly, I come from an Italian family and a very anxious family. I mean, I don't know if it's an Italian thing or what, but everybody struggled with anxiety growing up, and I thought I wasn't, I thought I wasn't struggling with it. I was like, wow, you guys are really nuts, and I'm lucky I'm not as crazy. But then, I got to the NFL, and there is on staff with the Jets was a sports therapist, Sarah Hickman. She was with the Jets. She did the NFL. She was with the Navy SEALs for a decade, and now she's
Wow.
with LA. Is it the LA Clippers and then some other pro hockey team? She's a stellar psychiatrist, and we worked together first because it was mandated by Eric Mangini, our head coach, that all the younger guys go through training sessions with Sarah. But then I ended up seeing her individually just because I really liked, the stuff that she had. A lot of it was
Yeah.
more performance related. Here's breathing techniques and visualization techniques and this, that, and the other. But then the more we got to talk and the more we got to unpacking myself, my background. And then, after about a year working with Sarah, I came to the realization that I really, not only did I have anxiety, but I had chronic, really bad anxiety. And it wasn't as bad as my family, and so I rationalized it that I didn't have it at all, but actually it was the opposite. We figured out that, I really, really did struggle with anxiety, and uh, it's been an uphill battle ever since. I mean, it's something, I have a love-hate relationship. I guess it's kind of a paradox because I feel like looking back, it's my anxiety that propelled me to do better.
Mm.
Like, I couldn't stay, I would be so anxious of not performing well that it wasn't debilitating for me, thank God. It was more motivating. It was like, oh no, I can't mess up, gotta grind harder. And so in that sense, I wouldn't trade it away. I was fortunate to have this anxiety in the way that functioned to allow me to be productive. But at the same time, especially now having kids, being married, there are times that it can be toxic and detrimental, and this, especially when you're thinking about the kids and how they're growing up and how you don't want them to ever feel that way.
Yeah.
So it's again, this is there's a lot here, but specifically I've been meeting with Sarah for years,
Okay.
since 2009 when we started. And I also have a therapist up here to work through anxiety. And I don't know if I'll ever get through it. It's a chronic thing that I deal with constantly. I was able, I remember I was so against medication. I didn't want to get on meds. I wanted to just to do it naturally. And then finally by 2012, working with Sarah for 3 years, she said, listen, you're really struggling. You need to just try some of these, I forget the term for them, but the medication, the Lexapro. And I took it, and within a week, I was like, why did I wait so long to take this?
Because you didn't know what you didn't know.
Yeah, exactly, Jeff. Until I took the meds, and it would it created such a buffer, right? So if I operated normally at an 8 out of 10 on the anxiety scale, now I was at 5, which was, I mean, I just was a world of difference. And it allowed me, not only that, but it allowed me to do better in our training sessions. Like, so when I'm working through the various techniques to deal with anxiety, it was easier to learn and pick that stuff up and
Yeah.
now implement it. So we can get into more specifics, but anxiety has been something I've struggled with my whole life. And it's a constant battle.
Well, you know what? It sounds like you got a good handle on it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Again, fortunate to have great
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
to help me out. So
So Mike, what advice can you give then to let's say you got the high school kid. I'm gonna ask you a couple of multi questions here.
yeah,
You got the high school athlete, hey, I want to go play college football.
yeah,
They get anxiety around that. Like, oh my God, what's it like? Then they show up, remember day one, Maine, Orono, Maine, middle of the summer. Oh
yeah,
my God, what did I get myself into?
yeah,
Right. And then it becomes, well, how do they get prepared mentally for that transition? Then I'm going to ask you the next question is, well, how do you tell the fifth year senior, right, about transitioning to the NFL and the
yeah,
anxiety of that and preparation for that? What advice can you give to the kids transitioning through all that?
yeah. It's as you're talking, I'm thinking about the burden of that well, not the burden, but the responsibility I take on, and I am trying to do a good job of alleviating that for the young guys, right? So the young guys come in the summer now, the rookies, they come in the summer, the freshmen, and they're with us for about a month before training camp starts. And doing player development, I have about 4 or 5 sessions with them. And during those sessions, I try to be as vulnerable and open with these things as possible. Because one thing that's helped me a lot is to realize that you're not this isn't unique to you. Everybody struggles with this. Even the greats have gone through phases like this. And so just knowing that and hearing that, right? So I tell them stories about how badly I wanted to quit my freshman year. I
Mm,
was so anxious. I was homesick for a year. And again, my father would never let me, but I just was so nervous, so anxious, and wanted anything to get out of it. And just sharing those stories with the guys so they know, listen, what you're feeling is natural. And this is I think when I think of the two life changes you brought up from high school to college and then college to the NFL, the latter was not nearly as difficult as the former.
right.
High school to college is hard as hell,
Yeah.
right? First time away from home, first time away from your parents,
Yeah.
a new group of people you've never met before, Division I football and all that brings. That's nothing. Division I football in college and in the NFL are not that much different. In fact, the NFL is a little bit easier because you don't have to deal with school.
Yeah.
But high school, the Division I football, that is a massive uh difference, right? There's
Yeah.
a big difference there. And so one thing I try to convey to these guys again is just that everybody goes through this as a natural to feel the way that you do. And I try to tell them this is going to go by so fast, right? I remember being that age and looking at the calendar and looking at the time and thinking, this is never going to end. We're going to
Yeah.
be in this forever.
Yep.
And I tell them, you blink and
It's over.
it's over. Yeah,
Yep.
it's over. And so trying to give them that perspective on on life and the transition from college to the NFL or from high school to college is something that I take on and try to do a good job of. I know our coaches do a great job as well. I think, in this phase of life, that's why coaches are so important and mentors,
Yeah.
because you have to be able to convey that message to these guys.
Yeah.
And I think it's changed so much, Jeff, since we've been there, right? Because like you said, there was none of that.
No.
Nobody
No.
held my hand. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Nobody told me, hey, this is going to go by quick and don't
Yeah.
worry and hang in there and it's natural. It was get your shit together. You know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean? Now it's not like that.
No.
Now the coaches, the staff, support staff plug in and try to help these young men. But it's not easy. And I guess other advice that I give them is to plug in, like we're talking about, to plug into each other, right?
Mm.
I still think of the group that I went through college with, and those are still my closest friends, right? One of the reasons I moved back to Maine is because my best friend Matt Mulligan lives 45 minutes north of me. And so, high school, NFL, my closest brothers were in college, and so I look at that. So I'm looking at the rookie group this year when I'm meeting with them, and that's one of the messages that I tell them is like, listen, embrace this. This time is going to go by so fast,
Yeah.
and your brothers are truly your brothers in this room, and you don't
Yeah.
realize it now because you're just starting. But
Right.
these will be the men that you do the rest of your life with. These will be your closest relationships, and so lean into each other, plug into each other. And
Yeah.
I think again, I feel like not that these young men don't struggle, but I think because they're so much more emotionally intelligent than we were, given the way things are more accepted, these things are talked about more. I think that it's a little bit easier in the sense that they're open and willing to do things like that, to
Yeah.
be vulnerable
Yeah.
when they're struggling, and that's huge. And you talk about Haley Perkins. I mean, when she got here, we met with the football team and told the team about Haley, and I believe she's had a line out her door ever since.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy, because that's another thing too, Jeff. Some of these, some of the anxiety and stuff is normal, and everybody's gonna go through it. And then there's some things that are really just a cognitive thing that you need to see somebody and work
Yeah.
through, right? So getting that message out to know that it's okay to see a professional to help you with this, and then being able to go and do it. And I've really seen that, our football team, they're open, and I'm sure if you talk to Haley, she'll let you know, like, she's slammed Monday through
Yeah.
Friday
Yeah.
with guys, waiting to meet with her. And so yeah, but there's a lot of growth, and I think about it. I wish I had a better answer, because I need to plug in more and learn more in this area, in this respect, because it's key. It's so crucial to be able to prepare the student athletes for what's ahead of them,
Yeah.
and to give them the resources necessary to deal with the emotions and the phase of life that
Yeah.
they're going through. And so I'm still in that learning process. I don't have a lot of tangible stuff outside of what I just said.
Well, I think, Mike, what you just kind of hit it right on the head is what the school provides to the athletes today.
Yeah.
If I go back, again, 40 years ago, there was no there was no player development, there was no school of sports therapist.
Never heard.
We had the school hospital, and it was Doc Archibald. You don't know who that is,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
anytime you had a problem, you went and saw him, and that was it.
yeah.
And he gave you a shot or whatever, you're done.
That's it.
But that was it. So to have a resource like you, one is a guy who played there and did great, then went on to a very successful NFL career,
Right.
can come back, and you can relate to these guys, and they can relate to you. Because it's not like you're 72 years old and talking about, something that happened before shoulder pads were invented.
Exactly.
You're not that far removed.
Right. Right. That
Even though
helps you.
yeah. And in your mind, you might think, hey, man, I'm not, but you're not that far gone from their current world.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
you can relate to them with the idea, hey, listen, guys, 20 years ago in 2002, all this stuff you and I are talking about didn't exist then either.
Exactly.
So it's just current. So these guys are very fortunate to have resources like you, and Haley at their fingertips.
And exactly. Oh, we were so, and credit to our athletic director, Jude Killey, who hired Haley, recognized the importance of that position, and hired her a few years back. Because I think we had somebody at Laddie who was a psychiatrist, but we didn't have like a sports
Yeah,
therapist.
right,
So we had a therapist on staff for the whole college, but didn't have a sports therapist. And
right.
like we've been talking about, being a Division I athlete, student athlete, just comes with another package of
Tough.
another set of issues. And
Yeah,
so having a sports therapist, and Haley played at the University of Maine, so
yeah,
she knows what those guys are going with
yeah,
everybody through. Um, you're right. Having that as a resource is huge.
yeah,
And credit to the kids for having the courage to go and do it. I give them a ton of respect because I
yeah,
fought it for so long. So, but
yeah,
you're right. Having those resources, that's the key.
yeah.
That's the key.
And then encouraging the kids to take advantage of it. Hey, it's okay to go see Haley. It's okay to come talk to you. It's not a bad thing,
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
know?
Jeff, I'll be on the phone with some of these guys 9 o'clock for 2 hours, just
Yeah,
talking life, because
yeah.
they'll be stressed about something. And I was thinking, there's nobody in our group that would have talked to anybody for two
No,
hours, let
no,
alone at the level that these young.
right.
So it's like,
Yeah,
again, I'm just blown away by how intelligent these guys are and
yeah,
how open and vulnerable they are, and that's huge for
yeah,
getting
yeah.
through it.
Yep. And I think the reason why the guys today, I shouldn't say guy, the girls and the guy
Yeah,
athletes
yeah.
are open and vulnerable today is because they're told it's okay to be,
Exactly. Exactly.
you
That's
know?
right.
Yeah,
That's right. That's the big difference. And so coming in and recognizing that, gives them the courage to go and get help. And
yeah,
when you don't get help, those things fester and
yeah,
it just gets worse and worse.
yeah.
So yeah, no, you're exactly right.
So in your career, Mike, I mean, again, it's a nice, long, successful career. What do you think was your biggest setback? Would it be either in college, in the NFL, or both?
Yeah. So I tell this story often too. I don't know if I would call it a setback, but I guess I'll call it a regret. So being from Brooklyn, New York, and growing up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, in New England country, being a Jets fan, I've been dealing with Tom Brady and the Patriots my whole life. So, um, in high school, Tom Brady takes over and he's beating my Jets every year.
Yeah,
Then my first 6 years in the NFL playing for the Jets, I think I played him 13 times. I might have won 2 or 3 times. I mean, he just beat us all the time. My last game in the NFL, January 16th, 2016, with the Chiefs, divisional round of the playoffs. Where are we? In Gillette, Tom Brady and the Patriots, and we lose that game. So the man's been an absolute nightmare for me. But nothing more, nothing more miserable than after I retired, I watched a documentary called Tom versus Time. It was on Facebook. It was
right.
like a documentary following Tom Brady around as he prepares for a season. And right at one of the first scenes of that documentary, they pan into his face and it's sort of a black background and you just see Tom Brady's face. And he says, if you're going to compete against me on Sunday, you better have given your life to this game because I've devoted every minute of my life to football. And so
Mm,
you think you're going to be successful against me, you better have given your life. And at that moment, I looked back at my 9 years in the NFL and thought, I did not give my life to this game.
mm,
9 years at the top. And I can't tell you how many times I made excuses to not work out extra, to not focus on my nutrition, to not study more film, to not study the playbook, to not study the opponent, um, to dick around, do X, Y, and Z. I mean, there were so many times I could look and there was excuses and missed opportunities. And I'm looking back and thinking, what kind of player could I have been had I had not done that? I had really done what Tom Brady is doing and just sold out. Because at the time
mm.
it's so short. And when football ends, it's over. There's no
It's
pickup
over.
football games. And so
Yeah.
now all I have is to look back and see 9 years of missed opportunities. I was an average football player, and that's being kind. I could have been excellent. Maybe not Tom Brady, but I could have been a hell of a lot better than I was had I had taken that approach. And
Mm,
I did. And so I will, and I don't, and I say this, and this isn't sort of hyperbole. This isn't something that is an exaggeration. There is a moment of every day of my life since 2017 when I watched this documentary where I feel that sort of that pain that
Mm.
that it's over and I can never have it back and I'll never know what it could have been. Um, and so moving forward, I decided I will never feel like that again. So as a Christian, as a husband, as a father, as an academic, um, I will never feel that way again. The things that are important to me, the things I'm doing now, they will get all of my attention. And there will be, I will never get to the end of something, whether at the end of life or whenever it is, and say, oh man, I could have put in more effort. I could have put in more time. I could have put in more energy. So I was actually, it's sort of bittersweet because that experience, as miserable as it is, has helped me to do life better because
Yeah.
I now see what it's like to get to the end of something and have regret about not doing it well. And so that's motivated and allowed me to, to
Mm.
really plug into the things that are important to me and and take those things very seriously, which I do. In fact, I I have a lot of friends, extended family, things like that, and they get frustrated with me. But anybody that's outside of my pillars, right? My things that are most important, they're getting the scraps of my time and
Right.
effort, and energy. Because at the end of the day, when I get to the end of life, I don't give a shit about that. These things I will care about. And so I'm not playing with that anymore. I'm not going to have that feeling ever again. But so long story short, yes, that would be my biggest setback or biggest regret was 9 years at the top and having a very mediocre career because I didn't sell out.
Mm. I'll tell you, Mike, it takes a lot of guts to talk about that. You know what I mean? I mean, there's so many like me. I'm listening to you prior to that conversation. Sick college career, awesome NFL guy, great career afterwards, and now you're telling me you have regret.
Mm,
Like,
yeah,
here's a guy like me who never even came close to the epitome of what you've had athletically, and I'm like, how can this guy have any regret? But there's always so many people you can think about who have more. But
mm,
man, once you realize how many more, I don't mean this in any disrespect, but how many more people have so much less.
right,
And if you
right,
can be grateful for what you have at the moment and what you're doing and be great at what you're doing right now,
right.
you forget about all the regret.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree with you, Jeff.
Yeah.
And this wasn't so I get so yeah, again, kind of a paradox. It's not I wouldn't say it's a lack of at least for me, it's not a lack of gratitude. Um, I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunities, and it's not so much a comparison with people with other people. They'll all you're right. There'll always be people
Yeah.
that are better. I like John Wooden's philosophy where he talks about, don't worry about the people on the outside because there'll always be somebody better who you'll wish you'll be like and you'll be jealous, or there'll be somebody worse that you'll be able to justify not working as hard. You say, well, at least I'm better than that person.
Right.
Um, you got to compete against yourself daily.
Yeah.
And so going back to my story, that's what makes me most frustrated is I could have given more to the game. I could have been better. I had more potential than I maximized because I was just mentally lazy at times.
Mm.
So I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I'm so fortunate, what it's done for my family, and I'm so grateful for football.
Yeah.
I just look back and think, damn, I could have been so much better. Well, I'm sorry, I could even so much better. I could have been better,
Yeah.
even if it's just a little bit better. And you don't recognize until it's over. Um, how fast I remember being out there and your first couple days on the job, you're like, wow, I'm in the NFL. And then the 9 years after that, it just becomes status quo. It's like a 9 to 5, and you don't realize. I wish I would have realized the opportunity I had. I wish I would have
Yeah.
realized what I was doing.
Yeah.
I still remember my first game and going out there, and Ben Roethlisberger's at quarterback, and Alan Faneca is in front of me at guard, and Heinz Ward is motioning in as I'm getting ready to right? And just being blown away like that.
Yeah.
Then after that game, I never had that feeling again. It was old hat. Didn't
Yeah.
matter, if I was playing Brett Favre, if I was playing whoever, didn't
Yeah.
matter.
Because
So
you were part of that group now.
exactly. And I wish I would have kept that awe of like, wow, I'm doing this. Let me maximize every second I have
Yeah.
because it's such a blessing. It's such an
Yeah.
opportunity. Um, and we'll all have regrets in life. I get that. But I'm gonna try to do the best I can to mitigate that.
Yeah.
Because just that feeling of that pit in my stomach every day that I have to know I'm not playing football and I could have been better at it than I was, and that there are missed opportunities in the past that I can do nothing about now. Um, it motivates me, but at the same time, it's incredibly frustrating.
Well, you got four helmets sitting behind you,
Yeah,
right? Which
yeah,
those are your own personal helmets. And they all show your stages and your progression,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I got to ask you the one question I ask everybody
yeah.
is what was it like when you realized, hey, this is the last time I'm putting this on? Or when you took it off for the last time and said, I'm never putting this on again.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
was that like?
It was that game against the Patriots, and my brother has the jersey. I took the jersey off and I signed it, and I wrote to Johnny, my brother, and I put the last one because I knew that was going to be my last game, 1-16-16, and then signed it and gave it to him. At that point, I don't know. Um, I was in a lot of pain. My wife talks to me about, I regretted retiring a couple of years after because I could have gone back for another season, but I was really struggling physically. I have a really bad shoulder. And I remember my wife, I'd be up all night and just going into her crying and saying, I can't do this. Don't let me go back to, next year because I just can't do this anymore. I'm taking Vicodin to go to bed because I
Oh,
was in so much pain. And as your orthopedic people out there will know, when it's joint and bone pain, there isn't really a painkiller that can affect that. It's like I took the Vicodin just to go to sleep.
yeah.
Um, uh, so I was really in a lot of pain. I think at that point I was ready to be done. I wasn't enjoying it because I was just so miserable and pain all the time. Um, but I'll tell you, so the end of my career, I haven't reflected a lot on. I'll think about that more that you said that because I've never been asked that, and I need to think about it more. But I'll tell you, in contrast, one of the most uh, one of the most incredible experiences I ever had was the first time I put the pads on. Right, so I grew up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, at a small school, and we had football for 6 or 7 years, and we had what you would expect for a small school that's only had football for a few years, which was just sort of ragtag equipment, and we had the jerseys, but we didn't have our names on the back of the jersey, right? So I remember thinking, oh man, I wish we had our names on our jerseys. And then I get to UMaine, and this is just an FCS. At the FCS level, most colleges don't have their names on the back of their jerseys. So I'm at Maine and I'm thinking, oh man, it'd be so cool to have the name on the back of my jersey. Then I get to Jets and we're in training camp. We go to the first preseason game and it's at Jets Stadium. And I walk into the locker room and I look and I see DeVito on the back of a Jets jersey. I walk into my locker and there's my pads and it says DeVito in a Jets jersey. And I get to put that on and run out the Jets Stadium. I have 500 crazy Italian family members yelling and screaming my name. Look, my dad and mom are there.
Yeah.
Everybody's there because everybody's in Brooklyn, so it was
Yeah.
easy. And I get to go out there and represent that name in front of my family, with the team that I grew up, that we all root for, that we all love.
How crazy is that?
It was just, and I remember getting done with that and thinking, if this ends now, it would be enough. It would be enough because that was such an amazing experience. And I think about that often. I hope my boys, not that it has to be the NFL, but I hope they get to experience something like that, where it's like, wow, life dream accomplished. Um, So yeah, that's really a profound moment in my life. But I'm glad you asked me the other question because I haven't reflected on that a lot, and I have to think about that more at the end of my career. I haven't
Yeah.
thought about
It's a tough one.
that.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Just blank
it's
it
a
out.
tough one.
Yeah.
Do you have a video of that? You running out in the field for the first time?
I'm sure my family does. We have a bunch of pictures from that game.
Yeah.
I remember it was against the Falcons, 2007 first preseason game. And I think it was the year that Mike Vick had just gotten arrested for that dog
Yeah.
stuff. Because I
Yeah.
remember thinking, oh, I'm get to play against Mike Vick, and then he
It
wasn't
wasn't
there.
there.
Yeah. But I remember going out there and feeling good, like knocking guys back and playing well and thinking, oh wow, I can do this. I can do this under. There's one thing to do it in practice.
Yeah.
You know, practice in the game,
Two
you
different
see
things.
guys who are great in practice who can't transfer it over.
Yeah.
And I remember being out there and thinking, can I do this under the lights? And playing well and thinking, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ready to be here. I'm ready to be here.
So how did you handle that pressure? Pressure playing in college is one thing, but NFL, you're playing with the best of the best. Like you said, you're under the lights, you're under the scrutiny. You're in New York, the
Yeah.
hardest city in the world to do anything in.
Right, right.
How the heck did you handle the high pressure of that?
You know, I was again so fortunate to have Eric Mangini, our head coach. So Eric Mangini was our head coach in 2007 and 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Belichick guy, and it was very hard. Off season was very hard. I had 7 days off in the summer. We went from April to when I got there all the way till July 9th, and then it was like July 17th. I had to be back for rookies at training
Yep.
camp. And we were at the facility all day, studying film, working out. I mean, it was hard,
Yeah.
but I knew I was ready because I couldn't have spent any more time studying and playing football. Right? It was like he had us so immersed in football that I was very confident going out there because my technique was getting exponentially better. I was starting to learn how to read backfield sets and formations. Um, I was prepared for the test, so there was certainly the pressure and that, oh man, can I do this against another team under the lights? But I couldn't have been more prepared than I was under Eric Mangini.
Awesome.
And it was very hard. A lot of the new rules that are in place in the NFL are because of guys like Eric Mangini. I think of that training camp, Jeff. We had 32 a days, and we'd have 9 on 7, the run period. We'd have team run, and then after practice, the rookies would have to do their own 9 on 7.
Oh,
That was in full pads. Then you'd come out later in the afternoon, and it was the same thing. So 30 days of 6 9 on 7 periods.
oh
So I
my
had
God.
180 9 on 7 periods going. I was ready to play the run.
Yeah,
You
you're
can't,
ready
you
to
can't
go.
take any more reps than that, So yeah, shout out to Eric Mangini, who's an incredible coach. And again, I look back at my life. I recently received an award for football, and I knew it was probably going to be the last award that I got. I'm 40 now. There's probably no more football awards coming. And so I really reflected back on my career, and it was just, it's amazing how many people played such a pivotal role. And so again, I was so fortunate. My dad, Jeff Commission, Jack Cosgrove, Eric Mangini, Rex Ryan, Andy Reid, everybody played such a huge role in that path,
Yeah.
in that journey. And so, yeah, very, very fortunate.
Now, do you still stay connected with all those coaches?
Yeah, yeah, I still do. I still do. Carl Dunbar is another coach that was huge in my career. He's the D-line coach with the Steelers. But yes, I text and call those guys often. And a lot of times just to tell them how much I love them and how grateful
Yeah.
I am. I'm sure sometimes they get sick of me.
Now,
But
I can guarantee you, Mike, no coach ever gets sick of their players, one coming back or
yeah,
two connecting, contacting, or like you said, tell them they love them.
yeah, yeah.
It's like they live for that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's interesting? We were reading a book as a staff called Legacy, the All Blacks book. It's a book called Legacy. And it talks about leadership and different things like that. So the coaching staff at the University of Maine, Coach Stevens had us all read that. And there was a quote in there, and I'm going to butcher it, but the quote was something like, plant seeds that you may never see grow. And when I think of coaches, and I talk to this to our coaching staff, like, I hope you guys realize you're truly world changers. I can't think of another role, another position, especially in college, where you're having such an impact on someone's life.
Yeah.
Because when from 0 to 18, you're with your parents and you're just not in a cognitive
Yeah.
space to grow like that.
Yeah.
And then after college, you're on your path and going. But those 4 or 5 years in college, that's probably the most impressionable, and that's the most sort of developmental that process that you'll go through. And so the coaches at that level are pivotal because
Yeah.
they're the people that you're plugging into. And so again, when I think of people out there that are changing the world, coaches really are those people.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are. They're impacting these players' lives in such a way that they're planting seeds that they don't realize they're growing, right?
Yeah.
So I tell Coach Kamiss, my D line coach, the lessons he taught me are being passed down to my kids, right? And they're learning that stuff now. And so I'm watching them develop. He's not even seeing what the changes.
Yeah.
So yeah, lucky to have great coaches.
Yeah. Yeah. Those coaches, I think the college coaches, they're the ones who build the foundation in the players that they'll carry for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely.
Like silly things about being on time. You know what I mean? I still have post-traumatic stress, waking up 5 times a night, worrying about being late in the morning.
Jeff, I still get up like, oh
I
no,
know.
do we have practice?
Yeah,
It's
right.
like,
Yeah, you have
actually,
the nightmares. I have the nightmares about my locker's empty. There's no equipment in it. I go out on the field. I'm missing my cleats. I'm like, wait a minute. Or I show up to practice. This is another nightmare I have all the time. I show up to practice and it's over. And
oh,
I missed it.
Jeff, I texted Andy Reid a couple months back because I had a nightmare that I was late to practice. And I said, hey, I just wanted to apologize. In my dreams, I was late to practice. He said something like, don't let it happen again.
Yeah. It's going to last forever.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like,
that's right.
it's crazy. It's crazy. But a couple more questions, right?
Yeah.
How did you handle transitioning, into your professional world now? You're used to being an athlete all the time, right? You doing the workouts, doing everything you got to do, going to practice, playing sports. How did you transition, into, the professional world? And what kind of concerns did you have around that, if any?
What was interesting, Jeff, is playing pro football for so long, I thought, oh, I'm just going to be good at I'm a pro, so when I got done and transitioned to the academic world, I was like, well, this will be easy peasy. I'm a pro football player. I can get this done. And it was incredibly humbling because you start from, ground zero. You
Right.
start from the beginning again and have to work your way up. And I was like, oh wow, this is very hard. And I remember how much work it takes to get to the top. And so what was great is, like we talked about at the beginning, I had learned those intangible aspects of, grinding, getting up early. If I can't figure something out, well, let's wake up at 3 a.m. then. And eventually, if I put in the hours, I'll figure this stuff out. And it also helped that I love the topic, right? So I studied philosophy, and I don't know if philosophy is something that someone would want to get a major in if they have to go out and get a job. It's like, I think it's one of the most important subjects, but obviously there's not a lot of work out there for philosophers outside of teaching.
Yeah.
So, I was fortunate to be, with football, that I was allowed to, I had the time and the resources to just plug in and learn something that I actually enjoyed and loved. So there was that, right? There was the love of learning philosophy, which made it easy to want to wake up early, to stay up late, to put in the extra hours because I just love the topic. I love the discipline. But so all those intangible things that football teaches you really came into play, and I saw how they transcended football, right? And that was really the first time I was like, oh wow, all of these things that we learned on the field actually help in other areas of life. But it was a humbling experience. Again, you had to start from the bottom. And so I started, in 2000, I started studying my last year in 2015. So I'm going on 9 or 10 years now. And it's taken a lot of extra effort, a lot of work. Again, having a lot of great people who have helped me and helped me grow. Um, but I love I love it. I just enjoy it so much. I laugh, I tell my football friends this often, but I think I like philosophy more than I like football. I mean, I just love it. So, Jeff, when you're that passionate about something,
It oozes out of you.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so I've just immersed
Well,
myself in
I
it.
think as I'm watching you, for those who can't, who are listening, this is I can see Mike's face, and the more you talk about philosophy, the more you smile.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well,
You know?
my son asked me recently, he said, we were thinking about having him play football, and he said, Dad, is football fun? And I said, yes. And then I said, oh, God, forgive me. I just lied to him. Football is hell,
Yeah.
right? Like even those who love it,
Yeah.
there are not the times that are fun are worth all the effort and energy that you've got because
Right.
they're that amazing.
Right.
But 90% of the time, it's not that fun.
No.
I
And the
mean, it's
fun
just
is, but
miserable.
the funnest part of football is most of it's not even football. Like it's the plane rides.
Yeah,
It's the bus rides.
exactly.
It's the parties after. It's the locker room. And it's not even playing the game.
Exactly.
But like you said, though, the game is what gives you all those other pieces.
Exactly, Jeff. That's
You know?
exactly right. And
Yeah.
it's the greatest sport in the world.
Yeah.
You will not learn
You
the
love to
less.
hate it.
That's right. That's right. But it really is not. It is not fun. I'll watch like the basketball team or the track team, and they're all
Yeah.
smiling, going to
Yeah.
practice, and you see
Yeah.
our guys, and they're just like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
oh
All the
man,
other sports are on like vacation year round.
that's it. That's it. Like nobody has to put on 50 pounds of pads,
Yeah.
go out in 90-degree weather,
Yeah.
run up against massive people at full speed for 3 hours straight. It's like
Uh,
it takes a special person.
so
Um,
so how did you figure out what your career path was going to be after football?
I read a book when I was playing football called "The Reason for God" by Timothy Keller, and
Okay.
it's a apologetics, like a philosophy of religion book. And I, became a Christian my last year in college, and then it was studying theology and things like that, and wasn't super interested. But then I read this book, "The Reason for God" by Timothy Keller, and I was like, whatever this dude's doing in here, that's what I want to do. And again, it was very much a philosophy of religion and looking at arguments for the existence of God, arguments against the existence of God. And I just was like, wow, this looks like fun. Um, and so I had signed up for, when I told my advisors and my player development people in the NFL, hey, can you get me ready to go back to school? Because when I get done, this is what I want to study. And so they got it all set up. They got me enrolled. And then as soon as football got done, I knew, okay, I transitioned right to it. Now I've been reading different books on philosophy,
Yeah.
and so I started to really say, oh yeah, no, I really, really enjoy this. Um, and yeah, and then so it was just a seamless transition. And I was very fortunate for that because a lot of guys, when they get done with football, that's one of the hardest things is figuring out what's
What's
next.
next?
Yeah, and I was very fortunate to have that in place and ready to go because it was still hard having that in place. But yeah, no, I was very that's where it started. It started in the league, and yeah, I haven't looked back.
So two more questions.
Yeah,
Okay. Um, Looking back, I know you talked about seeing the show with Tom Brady and that how that affected you.
yeah.
Um, is there anything else you would have done different outside of, hey, maybe giving more to the game, playing harder? Was there anything else you would have done differently
Yeah.
over your college to pro career?
I would have had more fun.
All
I
right.
think one of the things that hindered me as a player is I took it so seriously that I didn't allow myself any grace. And I think that if I would have went out there and the guys who play the best are the guys who go out there that are laughing and they're light on their feet and they get everybody else laughing with them. And everybody knows those guys on the team that like in the middle of training camp when you're
Oh
going
yeah.
through hell,
Yeah,
that's
they're
the guy that's
laughing.
smiling, yeah, and lifting you
And you're
up.
like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, but then you're laughing with them, and
Yeah.
it's like I should have had more fun. I took it. I took the game very seriously, and obviously it requires that. But I probably could have let it loose more. I probably could have
Yeah.
enjoyed myself more. Maybe taken some more chances. It was very much a follow the rules, play within the defense. And now I think I should have. I should have just hit some gaps and maybe went outlaw a little bit and tried to make some plays. And I see these guys making plays I'm like, oh man, I should have done something like that. So,
Eh,
uh, it's kind of a paradox, right? Because you talk about how hard and difficult and miserable it is. At the same time, it's important to enjoy it
yeah.
and love it.
Enjoy the ride.
Yeah, that's right. That's something I try to convey. We talked about at the beginning how fast it's going to be over.
Yeah.
And so it's something I try to convey to the guys now. Like they're in the middle of training camp up here
Yeah.
in Orno, and I tell them, hey guys, enjoy every second you have out here.
Enjoy the grind.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
it's going to be over soon and you're going to miss the hell out of it. So have fun, enjoy it.
So what's the future look like for you, Mike?
I
You're a
don't
young
know.
guy. You're only 40 years old. You had a heck of a career in the NFL. You got so many years in front of you. What is it looking like?
Oh, God willing, Jeff. We one thing. So there are three things that I'm doing that I really love. Right? I'm a well. There's more than that, but as far as like what my work, homeschooling my boys, finishing up my PhD in teaching philosophy, and then doing player development at the University of Maine. And so right now, I want to keep getting better in those areas. When I think of my long-term plans, they all center around, how great can I be as a homeschool dad, making sure my kids are ready for whatever the next phase in life is. How great can I be as a philosophy teacher? Can I be the sort of Neil deGrasse Tyson of philosophy and be somebody that communicates this stuff at a level where students find it interesting and important and want to learn more about it. And then with the player development, you know, how much more value can I bring to the team? What sort of programs can I implement? What information can I learn to pass down to our guys so that they are better? So I'm not great, Jeff, at being a big picture guy. I see these people that they have 5, 10, 15 years planned out and where they want to go. And it's so important. It's just not a talent of mine.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm trying to get better at it. But I guess if you were to ask me right now, those three things are the things that I'm most worried about, most concerned with growth in those areas. As far as my sort of work, as far as the grind is concerned, it's how good can I get? Because obviously my kids, that's vitally important. They're looking to me to get them ready for the world, and it's not just dad, but academically and whatever it may be. So I take that very, very seriously.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like we've said, philosophy and football are two of my loves. So I'm going to keep doing those things
Yeah.
until the good Lord says no more.
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, I can tell just by listening to you that you love it.
I love it, Jeff.
And Maine, the Black Bears, the community, the family, they are so lucky to have you back up there.
I appreciate you, Jeff. That means a lot, brother. It
You
really
know,
does. I'm lucky to do it.
from an old guy like me who wishes back then we had people like you, who knows what the path would have been.
Jeff, well, we're lucky to have guys like you that blaze the trail. Again, our group of alumni are just a different breed of human being, and
Yeah.
I know you're one of them. And so we're very fortunate to have men like you. And I love what you're doing here. This is such a
Yeah.
great resource, and so I'm incredibly grateful that you had me on. And I'm again appreciative of you as a friend, as an alumni, and what you're continuing to do.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, Mike. I'm thoroughly enjoying this and having fun. But is there anything else I haven't asked you that we talked about so many things today? Is there anything I haven't asked you think somebody should know before we end the show?
I think what would be great is if we can do this again, because I feel like I have so much more to
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about with you, and I've really enjoyed this, Jeff. So maybe we can plan to have a part two at some point.
Yeah. I
if
would
you
love that.
if you get good feedback and
Yeah.
the audience likes it, we
Yeah.
should do it again because I've really enjoyed this conversation and thank you for the great questions. There's a lot that I need to think about and reflect on more. So I've really I know we set out for 45 minutes and it's been well over that. So I've really enjoyed the time, Jeff. Thank you for having me on.
Well, Mike, this is a lot of fun, and I appreciate you taking the time away from your family and your personal time to jump on here and give your tremendous story that everybody should hear. You know, because everybody just thinks, oh, it's got to be so easy for Mike. You know what I mean? And it's not that easy, man. It's just not that easy.
I
You know?
appreciate you, Jeff. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's not easy, but it's a lot of fun. I'm
Yeah.
incredibly fortunate and blessed, and so. But thank you, brother.
Yeah. And I am. We are definitely doing a part two.
Absolutely. So many more stories to tell,
Oh
Jeff.
my
So
God. We can go on.
please
I
have me
told you.
back on.
I told you we could talk for hours.
That's right.
All right, Mike. We'll see you soon, man.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you, brother.